Hi there, Colin Gwynn here with DJI. In this video, we want to tell you a little bit about the advanced flight control system that's built into the Phantom. It's really the foundation of what makes the Phantom so accessible and so easy to fly, because the autopilot system, or the flight controller that's built into the Phantom, is actually a very advanced system. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it because one, it'll make you a better pilot so that you'll have a little bit of an understanding of what's going on when you're commanding the Phantom to go where you want it to go. And secondly, because it's just really neat, you may want to learn a little bit about how these flying machines and these flying cameras talk to satellites and navigate themselves. So first of all, inside the Phantom you have a host of sensors that can tell the autopilot system how the Phantom is leaning in any direction, whether it's going up or down, whether it's moving in space, whether what direction it's pointed in. And all these sensors are telling the autopilot system so that it can move the Phantom around in a way that's necessary to go where you're telling it to go. So it's actually kind of interpreting what you're saying as a pilot and then doing what you actually want it to do. So I guess to be more clear, if I'm telling the Phantom to stay in one place, and of course we know that you do that by just letting go of your sticks. So if I let go of my sticks and they're both in the center, I'm telling the Phantom just stay where you are. Well, what if there's like a 15-mile-an-hour wind coming from the right side of the Phantom here? Well, in order to stay where it is, the speed through the air has to actually be 15 miles per hour, which means that it needs to lean into the wind and fly 15 miles an hour through the wind in that direction so that its speed over ground can be 0. So it stays right where you tell it to be. So you'll see it kind of moving like this because the wind's blowing it, but it's going to maintain its position because you've told it don't go anywhere. So that's really the key thing to know, is that if I tell it not to go anywhere and it needs to fight a wind, it's going to fight that wind to stay there. Now that same thing applies if I tell it to go dead straight, say right toward you, right? But there's a 15-mile-an-hour crosswind coming from the right side. It knows that when I say go forward, it's not just going to tilt perfectly straight forward and get blown downwind. It's actually going to tilt forward and maintain that lean into the wind and fly straight forward. So it's going to do whatever it needs to do to just make itself fly straight forward. And the way it does that, I think a good way to kind of envision it or think about it is that you've got these, say you've got 7, 8, 9, 12, up to 12 or even more sometimes satellites that the Phantom can see, and it knows how far away it is from each of these satellites. So envision and think about it as though you've got these 12 strings going to a marionette, and the Phantom is kind of a marionette with all these strings coming down from all these satellites. And as it moves through space, those strings get shorter and longer. So that's how it knows where it is in space, so that it knows how to maintain its position, how to go in a straight line, and then therefore, as long as you wait before you take off for the lights on the bottom of the Phantom to turn green, you'll know that you are in a mode that it knows where the satellites are, it has good GPS reception, and it has marked its home point. So as long as you wait till the lights are green before you take off, you'll know that the Phantom knows where it took off because it had satellite reception before you took off. So it knows I took off from this point right here. So if I go up and I fly out, 200 or 300 meters, and for whatever reason, I lose my communication link, my control link to the Phantom, say the batteries die on my transmitter, or I'm standing on the end of a dock and I drop it in the water, the Phantom will actually remember, and it always knows where it took off. It will actually fly itself home and land itself autonomously using that satellite-based navigation. Now, a couple things to keep in mind when it flies itself home is that if you are lower than 20 meters in altitude, so if you are just 10 or 15 feet off the ground, it will raise itself up to 20 meters, then fly itself to its home point, and then slowly come down and land itself. And you'll notice it'll hover at about 40 feet for 15 seconds so that if you want to take back over again, you can. It just kind of gives you some time and lets people know below it, hey, there's this thing that's getting ready to land. So it kind of hovers up there for about 15 seconds before it slowly descends. Now, if you are already above 20 meters, so say you're 100 feet in the air, it will maintain that altitude, fly back to the home point, and then land itself. What that means is that if you have an obstacle that is higher than 60 feet, or sorry, higher than 20 meters, or 66 feet, between you and the Phantom, when it loses its signal, and you are below that altitude, it could hit that object on its way home. So you don't want to put something very tall, like a tall building or something like that, between you and the Phantom. If you're to lose reception, it's going to fly into that building. It does not have object awareness yet. Obviously, in the future, UAVs will know where everything is around them. They won't bump into things, and obviously we're all working on those technologies. But for now, what we do is we raise up to 66 feet to try to clear any low-lying obstacles. So just keep that in mind when you're flying. Now, if you're already up at 200 feet and there's a 100-foot tall building between you and the Phantom, that's okay, because it's going to maintain that 200-foot altitude coming home, and then it's going to land itself. So now that we've taken a quick look at how the flight controller works conceptually, let's go ahead and take it outside and see it in action. So I can see here that I've got reception on 12 satellites. I can also see that my rear arms are blinking green, which means that as soon as I take off, I will have set my home point, which means that if I were to lose reception for some reason, the Phantom 2 is going to fly itself home and land itself right where it took off. So let's go ahead and take off and look at some of these flight control features in real life. So if I tell the Phantom 2 to fly forward and I stop, then it's going to stay right there until I tell it to go somewhere else. So first, let's take a look at what happens if I mess with it, and let's see how the IMU can stabilize itself. So as soon as I hit the skid, you can see the Phantom automatically controls itself. Now how about the barometric altimeter? Let me push it up in the air. It knows it should be at about this altitude, so it's going to let itself come back down. So it comes right back to that same altitude. So that's your barometric altimeter. Now how about for GPS position? The last place I told the Phantom to be was right there. What if some outside source like wind or my hand takes the Phantom away from this position? What's going to happen? Now the Phantom actually flies itself back right back to this same position that it was already at, because it knows that that's where it was last told to be. How about if I take it over here? There it goes, flying right back to where I told it to be. So the point of GPS autopilot is not necessarily that you pre-program your entire route. It's just that when you say go forward, it goes forward. When you let go, it's going to stop itself right there using satellite technology. So the last thing we'll take a look at is the return to home fail-safe feature of the Phantom 2 Vision. So what happens if, say, we're flying a long way away, and for some reason, maybe the batteries in my remote controller go out, or maybe I'm standing on the end of a dock and I drop my controller in the water, but for some reason I lose signal with the Phantom 2 Vision. What's going to happen? So let's see, I am 300 feet away. Let's go a little farther. Let's cruise over here. All right, I'm 450 feet away. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my transmitter. And I know, since I waited for the green lights to be flashing before I took off, it's going to go up to 60 feet, fly itself home, and land itself. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my transmitter right now. Turn it off. Oh, immediately we see control signal lost on the screen. Now, we can keep watching it. It's now raising up to 60 feet. It says going home on my screen. Now it's turning around, and now it's autonomously, you can see my controller's off, it's flying itself home back to our location. I can see my altitude is at 66 feet, which is our 20-meter altitude that we raise up to. It's flying home at about 15 miles an hour. Now it's gonna stay at this altitude for 15 seconds. In order to take back over again, you'll need to turn your transmitter back on and flip out of the top position with the S1 switch. That tells it that you want to take back over. Now the altitude's coming down gradually. "35 feet. So it's going to come right back to the area we took off and land itself. And then the motors automatically turn off. And there you go. Those are the features of the GPS flight control system built into your Phantom 2 Vision. You guys have fun.